Hello, everyone, and welcome to GillHB and Friends. I'm Jill Harvey-Bush, and I am talking today to a real friend, an actual friend I've known for sort of 20 odd years, and it's Michele Paradise. And we're talking about narcissism, really. Well, that's where we're going to go. And as you know, when you listen to my podcast, I like to find out how have people got to where they've got to, and how did they get there? What led them to this job? Well, a bit of background really for us, isn't it, Michele? And also, this is going to be the very first one I'm going to put up on YouTube. So I'm being brave. I'm going to feel the fear. I know you're on YouTube, and obviously we can let people know where that is. But you and I met when we were assisting on NLP courses with Richard Bandler and Paul McKenna. So both coaches, both NLP trained. And each one of us, because there is a little group of us that meet as mentors and supervisors to each other, gone in different directions. Now, you've specialised going really with trauma, haven't you, and inner child, and you've done various courses, which has been lovely to watch as a friend to see. And I know that history, what led from one thing to another. So where did you go after NLP, and what's led you really to specialise in narcissistic behaviours?
Well, I'd have to start with my romantic relationships. I think that will help to explain it. I kept dating the same guy over and over again. He had a different face, he had a different name, he had a different job, but he was the same guy. And I was with my therapist one day, and she said to me, "Do you realize you're the common denominator in all of these relationships?" And I was like, "No, I hadn't thought about that." And it really hit me between the eyes, and I had to think about it because I'm at the time was very much an overthinker and overanalyzer. So I started thinking about it. I thought, she's right. I am. Because I would say things like, they're all losers, we're all the good men. And then I thought about it, they can't all be bad, can they? There must be something else going on here. There's some sort of undercurrent going on here. And that was me. And that's when I had the real awakening that everything starts with us. It's that awful expression that you never want to hear when a person's breaking up with you. "Oh, darling, it's not you, it's me." Well, it was me. It wasn't them. It was me. And I had to own that because now that doesn't mean that I thought I was a bad person. After I got over all of that, I realized that it wasn't that I was this bad person. I realized that I was this stuck person and I was this damaged person. Wounded is the phrase I prefer, actually, because I think we're all retrievable, recoverable, and not broken to the point where we can't come back to self. So I went on that trajectory of figuring out. Oh, and by the way, I had also married somebody so I was in a marriage with children and realizing that, this wasn't actually working very well. So I knew I had to do something differently, and it had to be radical and radical acceptance of self in that moment and in that time. So sometimes, I don't know, what do they say? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. Teachers appeared in my life. They appeared personally, and they appeared professionally. And I remember a friend took me to see Dr. Gabor Maté. He was in London for the first time. This was years ago. And I'd read some of his books in the realm of hungry ghosts about addiction. And I thought he was I just love the way he thought about things and the way he perceived things. So I thought, I'm going to go to this. And I had one of those really big aha moments because he was talking about childhood developmental trauma, which I had heard about, but my training didn't really go into trauma as such, because as you know, in NLP, we didn't go into the analysis of things, of people. We went into, let's help them change, let's turn that around. So I thought,
take them from where they are now to where they want to be, rather
exactly
than more the counselling side, isn't it? That's how I always explain it to clients, that the counsellor goes in and really has a good look, whereas we kind of go, okay, that's your past belief, we'll take you forward. So
desired outcome. What is your desired outcome? Where do you want to be? Let's get you there with these techniques, and which is beautiful. And I integrate that in my work still. It's not that I've stopped doing one and start doing something else. So anyway, I followed this thought, this path, and I was reading his stuff and listening to his videos, Dr. Maté, and it was like tick, tick, tick. It was me. Everything was just like the scales were falling from my eyes. And then he had this course called Compassion Inquiry for the first time. And I was one of the early adopters of that and signed up for it and did the course with him. And just a lot of stuff I actually knew from NLP, but I had never really personalized it. I helped other people, but I didn't actually come inside, which is what, a lot of therapists do sometimes. Not all, but they heal others or work with others. And sometimes we don't look at ourselves. So I really had a good look at myself, and I realized that I had a lot of work to do, that these relationships were not because these people were wrong or bad. They were just not right for me. And I was attracting them. And what that did is that brought me back to understanding how we have templates, so that's what I call it, of imprints, if you like, of our first experience with a romantic relationship, which is that of our parents. And for the first, as we know, for the first 7 years, we're developing our personality, and we're also developing our beliefs and values around relationships. So I watched my parents relate to each other unconsciously. It became very familiar. The word familial is in there. And I realized, I didn't realize then, not as a child, but I began to realize that I was dating my father. And my father was, and I just want to make this really clear. I don't blame my parents for anything. And I don't blame anybody else's parents for anything, because I think we're all doing our best. But when I had the ability and the time and the space and grace to step back, I could see how traumatized my parents were when I came into their lives. And they had such unresolved generational legacy trauma. So my father, which will link to one of the other words that you said, is definitely, he's deceased. He was definitely a narcissist, not NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. I don't know that, and I'm not going to presume that because he never was tested for that. I don't even know if it existed in those days, but he definitely had high levels of narcissistic personality style. So I normalized that. And I went out into the world unknowingly and attracted men that were very much like my father. In fact, I'm working on a book called I Married My Father. And it's about how we live what we learn in relationships until and unless we have some sort of intervention or we meet somebody that really turns us around and says, you're avoiding your emotions, you're not allowing yourself to be vulnerable, or you work with a therapist or a counselor. So anyway, I realized that I had dated my father for years, even married him.
But that's
And
often because that's the comfort zone, isn't it? That's what we know. That's what we feel comfortable
absolutely, the
with.
familiarity.
Yes, we know how to respond to that. I mean, you'll get friends who go out with the guys that treat them terribly,
Yeah.
and then they put up with it. Then they find Mr. Nice, where we're all going, oh, he's really lovely, and they self-sabotage because they don't know how to deal with this behavior. They don't know how to respond to it. It's not familiar, as you said. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, you just described my life. That's it. And yes, I have this term I use called dysfunctional safety. So in relationships, what we're looking for, romantic, but especially romantic, we're looking for safety. We think we're looking for love. We think we're looking for happiness, but without safety, none of those things can grow, right? However, if you learn dysfunction in relationships, if you watch dysfunction in relationships, that actually becomes familiar, it's normalized, and then it feels safe. So what I did was, and it's so interesting you said that, because sometimes we'll look at a girlfriend or a friend and go, how can you be with that guy? He treats you so badly, but he or she doesn't see that. They're just saying, because there is safety in the dysfunction that they have experienced for most of their childhood, all of their childhood, whatever. And I absolutely remember the first time I had a sleepover at a girlfriend's house, and I watched their parents sit on the sofa holding hands and having a kiss, not making out, but having a kiss on the cheek. And I was like, I thought that was weird, right? Because it was so out of my understanding of what was familiar and what looked like love to me. So yeah, so I went and married one, and I didn't realize at the time that I had been raised by a narcissistic father, and I also had a narcissistic brother. Didn't know any of this, because one thing I want to say right up front, and this is really important to know about any narcissistic relationship, is it's best and almost always seen in the rearview mirror, not in the windscreen. We really can't see it until it's, behind us, and we go, that's what it was. Now I get it. I thought I was losing my mind as we were gaslit or love bombed or whatever. So yeah, that's what I did. I just kind of dated the same guy, married the same guy. And just to jump forward for a moment, just to finish your thought, which is perfect, I did meet a really nice guy, and I did just about everything to destroy it because it was so uncomfortable and so unfamiliar. And it didn't feel safe. And it took me a really long time. I'd like to say we're still together. We are, I hope. And it took me a long time to accept, because I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I thought, well, this is an act. This is not real. No one can be this nice. No one can be this accepting. And after 6 years, I finally accepted that it is real.
And sometimes we test that, don't we? Like you say, you push it to the limit, and then, of course, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that they do treat you like that, and they do walk away, and you go, well, there you go. You see, I've proved it's right. I think it's important here that we put in the term or the definition, which I looked up. I thought, let me get the dictionary definition of it, because the word narcissist is thrown around all over the place these days, compared to even, I would say, 5-10 years ago, when I didn't really know the word. So I did look, so I'm going to read it. It said, it's a narcissist is a mental health condition in which people have an unreasonably high sense of their own importance. They need and seek too much attention and want people to admire them. People with this disorder may lack the ability to understand or care about the feelings of others. So again, I think narcissists can be hidden in plain sight. That we think they're being them. Yes. That I'm being really nice. It looks like I'm helping people. I think you gave me the term communal narcissist.
Communal narcissist, yeah.
That looks like they're helping everybody, but actually, if you disagree with them or criticize them, or you'll see the narcissistic side come out. I just thought it was important there that we clarify what would be a narcissist, so everybody's on the same page.
The real old derivation of narcissism is narcissus. And what he did is he wandered into the woods. I think Aphrodite was the woman that he was in love with. And he wandered into the woods and he found a pond. He had never seen water before. This is Greek mythology. So, so he looked at his reflection, and he just stared at his reflection for so long that he like starved himself, fell into the water and died, because he was so taken by his reflection. So that's really where the whole thing came from. And it's people that are so enamored with themselves and delusional and grandiose and entitled and all those things. So absolutely. But this is a perfect moment to just qualify a couple of things here. NPD is narcissistic personality disorder. It is only to be assessed by a mental health professional, like a psychologist, right? Or a psychiatrist, not even a psychotherapist. I don't believe, well, I won't go into that at the moment, but I think as it stands now, it's still the way it is, an absolute assessment test, not written or anything, but it's very comprehensive. So we cannot go around saying that, oh, you're a raging narcissist, because we don't know that. We really don't know that. And I don't think labels are ever helpful. I don't even like using the term narcissist, but I'm sort of compelled to, because it's, to be understood.
Part of the work you do, yeah.
Yeah. Now, they are a small percentage. They're like these statistics are hard. They're a movable feast, but they're between 1% and 5%, right? And the thing is, Jill, that there could be many, many more, but they're the last person that's going to go to a psychiatrist and have the assessment. Right? Their partner may say, I want you to go, but that doesn't mean they're going to go. And there's, I won't mention names, but there's a very famous narcissist, NPD, on YouTube that actually says, He's twice diagnosed against his will. I think it had something to do with a court case. And yes, he very reluctantly got that assessment. So that is at the really thin end of the spectrum. That is like, you know, very few people. You will, and I'm not saying this glibly, but you will find them on death row. There will be a lot of narcissistic personality disorders, psychopath, sociopath. In America, you know how we like to shorten things, so we call them narcopaths. You know, we just consolidate the two terms. So yeah, you know, they can be malignant narcissism is very, very dangerous and very serious because they kill people, right? So that's what I'm saying. You will find. And now, okay, I won't jump ahead. Then on the other end of the spectrum is what's called narcissistic personality style. So that's a person that has lots or some of the traits of narcissism. So it really, you know, it's so wrong of us to go around saying, you're a narcissist, she's a narcissist. I can say about my own family because I lived it and I now understand it and I've studied it and I'm trained in it. So I can see, and I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse. So that's why I speak to this. Narcissistic personality style will be, as I say, traits. Now, we are all born narcissistic. For the first year of our lives, we cannot do anything for ourselves. We can't change our nappy, we can't feed ourselves, we can't burp ourselves, we can't walk, talk, all of those things. So we rely on the world to look after us. And I always have this little Post-it note on my desk. So that's what a narcissist looks like. The world revolves around them. Now, as a baby, that's exactly what's meant to happen. In the first 3 years of our lives, we're meant to individuate and separate from our parent figure. And I say the word parent figure because sometimes we're not raised by our biological parent, raised by a grandparent or adopted parent or whatever. So we're meant to individuate and separate away from them, literally stand on our own 2 feet and begin to develop our personality, which goes on until about the age of 7. The thing that happens, again, there are shades of why a person becomes a narcissist, even narcissistic personality style. And again, it's a spectrum. So at one end of the spectrum, you will have lack of attunement to the parent figure. So the child has 3 basic needs: to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted just the way they are. If that is not given to them, if that attunement doesn't exist, again, I'm not blaming the parents, because what happens is stress gets in the way, anxiety gets in the way, their own mental health issues, physical health issues, socioeconomic issues. They don't attune to the child. So the child goes and finds it elsewhere. And that is when it can split. That woundedness can go into narcissism or people pleasing. So in my family, my brother went the narcissistic route. And that I could attribute a little bit to a child models the same sex parent first.
Right.
So you see, I went people pleasing. Now, when those two meet later in life, not my brother and I, but those 2 personality types, they are the perfect trauma bond, because the narcissist wants and the people pleaser gives. So I'm jumping ahead a bit, but just to explain that. The other end of the spectrum is what's called the golden child syndrome. So this child never was allowed to do anything for themselves. They were doted on. Metaphorically, their feet never touched the ground. They were just given everything. So they go out into the world and they expect to be given everything. And
that makes
they
sense.
don't know anything differently. And then there's nuance in between the two. Sometimes it can be bullying. But see, the thing is, I just did a little video on this on Instagram, which blew up my Instagram because people were like shouting at me, literally. Most of them agreed with me, but it doesn't matter. But I said, at this point, at this stage, narcissism is not genetic, it is epigenetic. And that's fact. We have no proof otherwise. People are working on that. So the reason I bring this up is you can see that it's not a hardwired temperament trait as like a highly sensitive person would be. This is born out of our environment. So we come in, we're narcissistic, we're meant to be narcissistic, then we're meant to individuate and separate. We get stuck because we're not loved enough in our perception of things, because it's what the child thinks, not what the parent is giving. And then you have different children in the same family that will have different experiences of the family. Because some people say, well, why is my brother narcissistic and I'm not? Or whatever. So it's an epigenetic evolution. And as I said, bullying can be part of that. And it's not just the parents, by the way, it's all the significant family members. It can be your siblings, because, you know, you can be born with some people have 10-year older sibling, you know, and they're
Absolutely
treated badly by them.
And I mean, and that's why we were saying, you were just saying that, you know, you do look at families to think, well, they're brought up with the same parents. How come they're so different? But actually, we can't be brought up. When people say, well, they're brought up the same, we can't. No. I'm the youngest of three. Obviously, my eldest sister was the only one when she was born. And had different behaviours around her. Then came along my second sister, and I came on the tail end. And sometimes you only have to look at photographs. I mean, we didn't have mobile phones way back then, so it was the good old camera. And there are lots of photographs of my elder sister when she's a baby and growing up. And then you look at my end of the spectrum, and that doesn't bother me, but as an example, you kind of go, well, there's not that many of me. Because by the time I came along, there was a lot going on in life, and my father wasn't very well, etc. And also we have that family joke that obviously my names weren't the most popular names with my parents, because obviously my sister's names were the most popular. She was the firstborn. You don't go and give them the ones that you don't like the most.
So true.
So I mean, if you think about it, that's what happens when we're three daughters. But when you're saying childhood trauma, what would come under trauma then?
Before we go there, I just want to share a quote with you, because Gabor Maté says, no two children are born into the same family.
Absolutely.
And it blew my mind when I heard that. And if you look at my brother, he's 4 years older than me. He was an only child for 4 years. And then I came along and ruined his life, you know.
Exactly. So, and then I came along and I was the third wheel. And also in my own personal family, Michele, you know, my eldest sister had my dad 5-6 years longer than I did.
Yeah.
So my dad died when I was 5, you know, she was 10 going on 11. And so, of course, we can't possibly have been brought up the same way, because the whole family dynamic had to change. And that's why you're saying you can't blame your parents. And it took me a while to stop blaming my mum.
No,
you know?
Not at all. I mean, the more I've learned about and I know very little, but the more I learned about my parents' childhood, I can't believe they got as far as they got in life. Absolutely. And I won't go into it because we don't have time, but your question is to describe what childhood developmental trauma is. Yeah.
Yes.
The best way I could do that, it's not the best way, but one of the ways I can do it is there's a test out. Sorry, it's not like I test everybody on everything. I don't, but I have an intake form called ACE. It's an ACE quiz, ACE score, ACE test, and it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And what's so exciting about it, and I geek out on these things. I'm very excited about it. It's 10 questions, and they all start with, before the age of 18, did you experience this in your family? And it will be something like divorce is one of them, sexual abuse, did you not have enough food, shelter, things like that. And the former attorney general in California, I think it was attorney general, she made it mandatory in all schools in California for a child to take this as an entry into school, so that teachers had a baseline assessment of where these kids came from, or what they experienced, you know, because it's very vague, and you don't even have to, you know, really know that much about it. You just have to tick yes or no. So what happens is you have this scoring system of 0 to 10, and it's not like carved in stone or anything, but the higher the score, the more likely that person is going to have perhaps autoimmune diseases, severe illnesses as they get older, addiction, things like that. They may have trouble navigating the world because they have started out in such deficit where they did not have their basic needs met. And also they weren't seen, and they weren't heard, and they weren't validated, which are our really basic emotional needs. So childhood development trauma easiest to explain is it's small t trauma. Actually, I don't think it's that small, but this is how we describe it. It's not the big things like, you know, an earthquake, a car accident, stuff. These are the simmering, everyday little things that go on. So one of the questions is, was there alcoholism in your family? Was there mental illness in your family? And we now know these things have such an impact on a child.
Mm-hmm.
And the brain isn't fully formed. I don't know why they stopped at 18, but it's usually not fully formed to about 25, 26 years old. So the child, the teenager, is struggling to process this information, to understand it. And a lot of times the situation that they're in because of these adverse childhood experiences, they are pretty much on their own. They may be a parentified child raising other siblings. They might be living with alcoholic parents or substance abusing parents that they, you know, really have to look after them.
Could it also be a sibling, for example, because I've got friends, obviously, that are then sidelined because either the older sister or younger sister or brother or sibling has had trauma. Maybe they're into drugs, or maybe they've had, you know, something going on in their lives, that you know, a serious illness, and the other one feels a little bit sidetracked, you know, when childhood cancer, for example, with a sibling, something like that. So you can understand why the parents are kind of doing it, but it's those little traumas, isn't it? That's meaning.
It is. And it's a great question because, yes, if I'm remembering now that, because I haven't looked at it for a while, it actually says in your household. So it doesn't say with your parents. It's not like specific to the parents, but it's, again, it's epigenetic. In your household, did you experience this? So yes, it could be a brother beating you up. It could be a sister that keeps getting into trouble and there's no oxygen left in the room for any other kids, you know, because this one gets the squeaky
all the
wheel.
attention,
all the attention. And also if there is a narcissistic parent, what they frequently do is they create, I think unwittingly, that I don't think it's, I get up in the morning and go, I'm going to do this. A parent doesn't say that, but they can create this dynamic of what is called a golden child and a scapegoat child. So the golden child would obviously be the child that's getting all the attention, and the scapegoat child will be blamed for everything. And that can lead to adverse childhood experiences and childhood developmental trauma. Not lead to adverse childhood. That is part of adverse childhood experiences that can lead to childhood developmental trauma. So it's this simmering everyday stuff. And I hear it all the time. Clients will say to me, I had a really good childhood. And I'm like, okay, I'm not here to dispute that, right? And they'll say, yeah, you know, I went to a really good school. We had a nice house. We had a car. We had this. We went on vacations. But when you get into it, they had no connection to their parents. It's as if their parents were on the other side of a glass wall, you know? And the parents, again, I'm not blaming them because they were doing the best they could. They provided all the material needs that the child required, but they were emotionally checked out. And a child, of course, needs to have housing, shelter, food, clothing, all that, but not in a big way.
Not in abundance, if you know what I mean.
They don't need to be super wealthy. I
don't need to have the flash car, the horse, the this, the that. Actually, what I need is for you to sit down and read a story with me, or
they need the wealth of emotions from the parents.
Rather than being on your phone, then it's actually paying attention to what I'm doing.
And that is it coming right back to the center. It is stress. Okay. It is absolute stress that separates us from the parents. And phones is a huge one, you know, picking up the phone when you're with your child. We don't even think about it anymore. There's a term used in relationships and sort of adult romantic relationships. It's not just then, but it's 1,000 little cuts, we say. And Esther Perel has the term, she calls it ambiguous loss, which I love. It's just such a great term. And it's that you don't know why, but suddenly you're disconnected from your partner. You know, it's not suddenly, but you notice one day that you're not intimate anymore, or you don't do things together, but you're still kind of rubbing along. And that it's that ambiguous loss, and it comes through 1,000 little cuts. And one of the things that she highlights is you're sitting there with your partner and you pick up your phone. and they're talking to you and you pick up your phone and you just kind of go, you look at your phone because a message has come up, which is taking you away from that person. It's the same with parent figures and children, you know. And I'm not saying you have to give them 100% every single minute of the day, but it's about the quality of the time that you're with them, as always, not the quantity.
Yeah.
And
I think that's even
all
got,
a kid knows.
That's got even worse, because now it's not so much the phone, but I'm noticing people doing this. Oh, and
I got one of those. Yeah.
You know, I'm picking up my emails. I have a very old-fashioned watch, and I just think, whoa. Oh no, that's just a reminder for me. Oh, sorry, even as an adult, I feel it.
Yeah.
That where's your attention, Gab? For that split second,
yeah,
you've been attracted by something on your wrist that you just have to look at. And it's something I did with Jackson when he was younger. In fact, I've still got the chair right here to my right hand side. If I was busy working and he'd come home from school and he'd just stick his head around the office door and go, "Hi mum, how are you?" "Oh, I'm fine. How was your day?" "Great." And he went, then that's all I knew he wanted. If he came in and sat down in my rocking chair, which used to be my client's chair as well, then I knew this was my point to stop what I was doing and to turn around and give him my full attention. In fact, we joke about it now, Michele, because he'll text me or ring me up and say, "Mum, have you got, I need a rocking chair chat."
I thought you were going to say that. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I need a rocking chair chat.
Such a great anchor, the rocking chair.
Absolutely. It's a really great anchor that's still used now, which means I know that he needs a serious chat. But he knew that he got my full attention. Always said, luckily, as we're saying, we didn't have the mobile phones that we've got then when he was growing up. Yeah. So I'm dreading to think what the generation is now like, who are struggling, as you say. Does that mean we become even more narcissistic? Would you say that's also happening?
Well, I think we're going to become far less attuned to each other. And one of the most terrifying but amazing phrases I ever heard around, you probably heard this around mobile phones, is it brings us closer to people further away and further away from people close to us.
Yes.
And a truer thing has not been said about phones, because you're sitting in the room with your child and you're on your phone. And for me, and we're not going to go down this rabbit hole, I know, because we have other things to talk about, is when they hand the kid the phone to like babysit the kid, because I'm doing something else.
Yeah. It's like going to concerts and things nowadays. The amount of people that watch the concert through the phone. And I just think, hang on.
You paid all that money to look at
all that money. You might as well have stayed at home and watched it online.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, where were we?
Yes,
we were talking about adverse childhood experiences and childhood. So childhood developmental trauma is at the basis of our personality.
And that can be to 18. When we say childhood, we're not talking.
Well, yeah. So our personality takes about 7 years to develop. So what happens is, in our environment, and I won't get into attachment theory, which is really relevant to all this, but it's a whole big piece. But if we are securely attached in our family, we are very resilient and we feel very secure. Obviously, we feel very anchored and grounded in our life. We don't become avoidant or ambivalent, anxious, or the other one is disorganized. So we can weather that storm of life very well. A lot of us are not securely attached because the lack of attunement with the parents. So what happens, or the parent figures in the environment, what happens is we do something called a personality adaptation. So narcissism is a personality adaptation. It is a way to survive. I am in the center and you will all give me what I need. Then I feel validated and then I can survive. Not the kid's fault. That's why we got to stop bashing narcissists, because it's not their fault. It's their woundedness that is sending them in that direction. I am, for ease of explanation, I am a recovering people pleaser. I like that word now. And I went the other way, where the world, I had to go out into the world and make them happy or satisfy them in order for me to feel validated. So it's the inversion of that. There's only two. There are many, many other archetypes of personality adaptation. So people say we're born with a personality. We're actually not. We might be born with temperament traits, because I'm an HSP, a highly sensitive person, which is like 20% of the population. That is hardwired temperament trait from birth. But that will affect whether a person becomes a narcissist, because it will have an impact on their resiliency, but it doesn't mean that narcissism is genetic. And I'm going to stand by that. I may hear people screaming on the other side of the screen going, that's not true, but it hasn't improved otherwise yet. Brain scans show different activations in the brain, but that's the wiring as a result of adverse childhood experiences. Yep. And just to really go a little bit further, adverse childhood experience can start in utero, because it's the mother downloading stressors onto the fetus, not on purpose, but this could be her own struggles, or the people around her not wanting the baby, or she got pregnant under very awful circumstances, like rape, sexual abuse, things like that. And that is completely downloaded onto the child. So the child can come out already traumatized. Because some people say, oh, they were born that way. Well, that's why they look like they were born that way, because they were traumatized in utero. So, and I actually have a question on my intake form. Do you know, or can you find out if you had a traumatic birth / pregnancy, you know, of your own when you were born? And I did. And that's how I figured this stuff out. I had a very traumatic birth, physical, not emotional. Well, I'm sure that was that too. And it has affected me. And that has helped me now to heal that part, because I now know I didn't, you know, we don't think about that part, do we? We think, oh, we just came into the world and everything started. No, certainly the third trimester of a pregnancy is the most important for staying calm and not having adverse experiences and things like that. So I hope this is making sense. I know I'm throwing a lot here, but that is, if we're really focusing on narcissism and bringing in all the other factors, we develop any of these personality traits, adaptations, because it's in response to our environment. And I think kids are incredibly intelligent, that they figure this out without figuring this out. You know, they don't sit down and get a piece of paper and say, hey, I'm not attuned to my parents, so I may become a narcissist because I'll get a lot that way, or maybe I'll become a people pleaser or a fixer or the life of the party or whatever it is. And you can have layers of that too, not just one. And they don't, they just try it out and it works. And they follow that path because, you know, the path of least resistance.
Yeah. It's tried and tested. It's worked for me again and again and again and again and again, and I'll keep doing it.
Yeah. I learned really young that if I made fun of myself and did silly things, I made people laugh. It worked. And that made me feel validated, right? Because they saw me and they laughed. Yeah. And that's a good thing, because we're all downloading, you know, some really good endorphins here, laughing and all that. So I kept doing it. But what I was doing is I was exiling the part of me that was wounded. So I was, you know, putting on a mask, life of the party, or whatever you wanted to call me. And then that pleased people. So, okay, now the people, I don't like labels, but for the sake of this conversation, it is helpful. So yeah, it's, we go in the direction that works best for us. And a narcissist will go in the direction whereby he or she realizes that they can manipulate a situation to get their needs met. And 100%, what I'm about to say, 100% is true. A narcissist is the least confident person in the room. They are the least secure person in the room. That's why they need to gather. And what we're just a spoke on their wheel, and people drop out because, you know, we figure out what they're doing, or somebody else helps us figure out, and other people get on because they're usually very charismatic. And there are 4 types of narcissists. There's the classic narcissist, which is, you know, delusional, entitled, all the things that you said. And all the other narcissists that I'm about to describe have all of those as well. But then there's other variations on it. So so the classic narcissist is Not the most harmful. They can be harmful in other ways. This is in no order. The second one would be a malignant narcissist. They are very, very dangerous. Those are the people that will kill you or hurt you. They're on death row. They have absolutely no compunction about getting what they want at any cost. And they feel that they're never going to get caught, which is why they do it, because they wouldn't do it if they thought they were going to get caught.
Yeah.
And there's loads of, I see them advertised all the time, like documentaries on serial killers. They're usually malignant narcissists, and how there's one on at the moment advertised about a man who was married 6 times and like 4 of the wives are dead. I mean, that's not a coincidence that 4 of them are dead. And then they go into how they were killed, and he talks and he's like, I did nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. So there's the delusion of that. So those are really the most dangerous in terms of physical and mental health. Then there's the covert narcissist. And the covert narcissist is very hard to spot. And statistically, women tend to be more covert narcissists than men. They can hide more easily in plain sight. I was, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but I was raised by nuns, schooled by nuns, and that can lead to, hiding in the habit of literally hiding in the habit of, they were quite awful to us, corporal punishment and everything. But they got away with it because they were nuns and they were authority figures and all of that. And the fourth one, and I'm skimming over these very quickly, is communal narcissism. And they're usually found in cults. That's the easiest way to describe them. They will be cult-like figures, and they will get people to do things that are really awful. I think it was Jonestown, if I got the facts right, where the cult leader got everybody to take this lethal poison and die. And they did, knowing they were going to die. They did. They followed him. Now, there are variations on all of this. There's vulnerable narcissists, cerebral narcissists, and all of that. But they tend to fall into those 4 categories. And covert is really hard to define because, as I say, it's really hard to see. I was married to a covert narcissist. I now know that, but I only know that in hindsight because of they tend to be not grandiose. For example, let's just use a party as an example. They'll go to a party and they might stand in the corner and people will come up to them, but they don't work the room. They're quite, sensitive. They appear to be sensitive. But one of the big giveaways is they will make comments like, well, if I had their money, I'd be really successful too. If I had that family, I'd have gone to university and have a PhD by now. I would have been very successful. So everything is like somebody else's fault. Well, with narcissists, it always is somebody else's fault. But for them, it's much more about if they could see me, they would know. So it's this real sour grapes and moaning and complaining about things. A classic narcissist will be much more out there and working the room and being entrepreneurial. And statistically, it used to be that men were there were more narcissistic men than women, but that's reaching parity now. And
also, is that because women were good at hiding it?
Yes, I was just about to say that. It was more covert. No, I love it. I love it that you're getting there before me. And they also, I think it has something to do with the stressors of women being in, male-dominated workplaces where they really had to work, in my opinion, sometimes twice as hard. They but they chose to adapt sort of more of an alpha male energy to survive in some of these workplaces. And this blew my mind. I think it's about 15 to 20% of not this statistic, but the other one I'm about to say, of the population are, let's say, narcissistic personality style, including NPD. All right. However, when you get into C-suite, the military, Hollywood, medicine, can't think of the other one at the moment, it goes up to 50+%.
Wow.
Yeah. Because of the nature of the environment.
That attracts them? do you think, those, or because of their personality, that's how they get into
It's kind of a
C-suite,
chicken and
that's how
egg,
it's,
you
yeah,
know?
which comes first?
Yeah, which comes first? I think that it takes a certain type of person to rise to the top. And okay, to answer it in a different way, if you look, certainly in the Western world, I think I can say this, with some confidence. In the Western world, since I was a child, we now have populist leaders, and they
Yeah.
are all pretty narcissistic. And there's one in particular, I'm not going to mention any names, who is a malignant narcissist. Okay. And we are applauding this. And these are just my own thoughts. I have no statistics on this, but I think, certainly the 80s really changed things, the time of greed, which started with greed and everything. And we started applauding, the Wolf of Wall Street and all of those films that were around. We started applauding these people. Go, they're amazing. I want to be like this. I want to. You have to have a certain type of personality to step on people and not care about meeting them on the way down. You're just looking at the way up. And some of those places that I've mentioned, like C-suite and military, medicine, you're allowed to do that. They want you to be the top. They want you to be right up there. Politics, that's the one I was thinking of. I missed that. They want you to be at the top. They want you to have like the ultimate leadership. And so we're no longer community based. We are individuals. We are very much about, this is my space and this is what I'm going to do. And the rest of you can just, whatever.
Again,
off.
I think social media,
Yes.
kind of encourages that 100%.
Absolutely. It is a feeding ground for narcissism. Absolutely. And I don't mean to insult anybody, but the whole influencer thing, and because what I haven't mentioned is a narcissist is wearing a mask, because he or she behind that mask is a completely different person, the most insecure person in the room. And now we're beginning to see behind the curtain of influencers. I don't know if you've seen any of this online, but they set up these props in their room and they live like in a bedsit or a studio apartment without a lot of money, but they're jetting all over the world and they've got all these products. And I'm not saying all of them, but it's a hotbed for pretending to be something that you're not. And we love this stuff. We absolutely love it.
But it's also quite dangerous, isn't it, when for some of the courses that you see online, and people who are saying they're therapists, or I can help you with this and I can help you with that, then actually when you dig down, they're not quite what they seem. But they'll tell you they're showing you everything that's going on, but actually they're not.
Yeah. And I have this, you heard me say this before at one of our lunches, I call them TikTok therapists. And they come on, and my daughter showed me one. She didn't realize what she was showing me. It's, wonderful young woman, very intelligent. And she said something like, I'm studying for a law degree and I've realized that I have ADHD. Well, you don't have ADHD. It's not a thing. It's a set of symptoms, and it's so many variables to it. But we'll go along with that terminology for a moment. And she would get on TikTok or Instagram every day and go, 3 things that I've noticed today that I know I am ADHD. I'm hypervigilant. I don't like loud noises, or whatever she said. And I was like, please stop watching this, because these people have no professional training. And okay, it's great that people want to share that they have mental health issues, because then it helps a lot of other people to not hide these things, but be careful the information that you're giving them. And these kids follow this stuff. They believe all of this to be true. There's enough of us out there now that do have training in lots of different areas that are offering real, genuine, bona fide information. So just
some of
carefully.
That comes in with the, yes, well, this is free, and this lady or this man or this person or this coach or this therapist is saying, well, this is what I experienced and this is how you overcome it. Here's your 10 steps to, and or here's the so-and-so to. And And I must admit, I think we've talked about it on our lunches, that sometimes you start to think, whoa, we're not attempting to compete, but you look at this and then people will come to you and then they find out your fee. And then you think, oh, well, no, this lady over here, or this therapist over here, or this coach over here. And you think, just dig down a little bit deeper, do a little bit more research. But people don't. Well, we know, because that's fake news, don't we? That people actually kind of believe what's put in front of them without now taking the time to do a little bit of research.
Yes, and if it resonates with them, they're hooked. I mean, I'm on Instagram and I see it all the time. If they like something I say and it says, so-and-so has followed you from your reel, which means they resonated with my message. But
exactly.
Just to say, there are many, many of us that give away loads of stuff for free. We don't want anything from you, because we realize that there are so many people in pain out there. And I sort of specialize now, not by choice, but it's, I followed the metrics, and people want a moral narcissism. So I do a moral narcissism, and I know it inside out, having experienced it myself. So, if anybody's interested in narcissism, please follow me on Instagram. There's lots of free stuff, and we give away,
but the difference is
master classes and everything.
Well, if you did the research behind you just by looking at your website, which I can mention is findingparadise.me, so I'll get that in there now. And that's what I'm talking about, is before you believe this person, do a little bit behind it, but we don't. We follow.
Absolutely.
And if I looked at you, I would go, okay, let me just double check. What experience has this woman got? What is her backstory, before I take everything on board that she says, to do this, to do that? And as opposed to somebody else I might search through and go, well, hang on, what training have they had? That's interesting.
When I did that video that kind of blew up my Instagram about narcissism is not genetic, I actually got that from people. They're like, who are you? What are your credentials? And I just very gently said, thank you for your comment. It's all welcome. Go onto my link tree. All of my information is there. Because I have nothing to hide. But yes, you're right. People don't take
it's
the
right
time
there. All they have to do was click on your bio.
My bio,
and
it's all there.
But it's quicker, isn't it, to just write a comment than actually take that responsibility. And I think
projection, isn't it? It's projection. It's what they're going through is now being projected onto me, and that's fine. And I said, as soon as anybody can show me that it's genetic, I will redact everything I've said. I have no problem with that. I'm not here to be right. I'm just here to share facts. My sort of tagline is I offer evidence-based information coupled with my own personal experiences. That's it, And for me, I'd like to listen to somebody who has training, but also has experience.
Absolutely.
I like things to come to life, not just from a book, like, what was it like for you when you went through that? And I can actually now say that because I'm on the other side of it. So narcissism is a hot trending topic at the moment, frequently misdiagnosed. I just got off a call with a client whose former partner is just calling that person that name, that all the time. And we've been working on managing that, because it's so unfair. The person that's calling that person that narcissist has no training, no knowledge, just hurt, a lot of hurt, and you're a narcissist, and that means that you're hurting me because I'm empathic. It actually has turned out to be quite different. So how do you know you're a narcissist? This is a burning question.
Of course, it's got to be a burning question. How do I know if I'm a narcissist or not?
Well, there used to be this old adage, which I loved, was if you ask yourself the question, you're definitely not a narcissist. Wrong. That's so wrong. But it was a nice thought. People said, oh, well, if you're asking yourself that, you have self-reflection and you're definitely not a narcissist. No, actually, that's not true. In fact, I did a little video today on how you can, a narcissist going to therapy, working with an untrained therapist,
who
and
can't
punk
spot
the therapist, right?
Yes.
And do the love bombing and the devaluation, the gaslighting and all that. So how do you know? It's not a perfect science. It's like covert narcissism. There are soft edges around it. As I understand it, and the people that I follow and that I've been trained by, it's to do with self-reflection, but it's the outcome of your self-reflection that matters. So let's say somebody says, I'm a narcissist, and I go home and I go, well, maybe I am. Let me think about that. Let me think about my relationship with that person. What have I said to them? And oh, I remember we had a row about that. So instead of me going, well, yeah, I did say some things there that were really hurtful to that person, and I can see why I upset them. Maybe I'll drop them a text and apologize. A narcissist doesn't do that. They become, no matter what happened, they become the victim of the story, of the situation, always. So what that would look like is, okay, I'm going to sit down and think about what she said. Why she's so upset with me. Yeah, I do remember we had a row and I said this and she said that. But she has no idea what my life is like. She has no idea how hard my life has been like. She has no idea that I was bullied and that this happened and that my brother got more, whatever. So I justify my role in that situation, but I always have to be either right or I always have to be the victim of the piece. Now, that's the hard part. The hard part is this, is does a narcissist really know that that's what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
But it's not about that. It's about you identifying that in a relationship with a narcissist, that you identifying, seeing the pattern. Because a lot of the stuff I do is just to create awareness. That's the number one thing. You've got to have awareness of anything. So creating awareness of, I'm in a relationship with somebody. This feels toxic. This doesn't feel right. I feel really bad about myself all the time. I'm second guessing myself. I think I'm being gaslit, but I'm not sure. And watch how they maneuver a situation. They might be in a restaurant and say, be really rude to the server. And you might look at them and go, well, that wasn't really a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, when I came in the room, she gave me the sideways look. She didn't like me from the moment she saw me. Right.
Yeah.
So it's always about them not getting their needs met. They are not getting that server, for example, to be one of their suppliers, because the narcissist, all he or she is looking for is supply, consistent, constant, positive validation.
Nobody to criticize them, nobody to pick them up. Even if they're asking anonymously for feedback, and then they'll work out. And they won't.
No blame, blame for anything. Everything is everybody else's fault.
Correct.
You
so there'll be a long.
Sorry, you go.
It'll be a long, for example, explanation or a long email saying, well, it's because of this and you don't understand that.
Yes.
You got it. On, and it's your
justification.
Fault. Yes.
And you will get an apology, but it will never be heartfelt, and there'll probably be a but somewhere. And we know what a but means, don't we? That everything I said before
that is irrelevant.
Exactly. Was not true. I just said it to kind of slide it in there. But yeah, you'll get, sorry. Yeah, but I had a really bad day. I don't feel well. Their world is much more traumatic and dramatic than your world. So another big one is minimization. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so much to this, but let's say you're ill.
Series of these.
I know, we'll do a whole thing. Let's say you're my partner and you're ill. You're seriously ill, right? And I've got man flu, let's say. And you maybe don't want to put anything on. You're like dealing with hospitalizations and things. And I will come and go, oh God, I've never felt this bad. I want to die. And you're like lying there after a treatment of something. And I'm like, can you make me a cup of tea? Can you get me something? I'm far worse than you are. They minimize, especially around health. It's like a big one for them. They really can use health to their advantage, or so they think they can use it to their advantage. So there's 3 stages of being with a narcissist, because I feel compelled to mention these before we finish. The first one is love bombing. And that can last from like 6 hours to 6 months to a year. There's no right or wrong here. Love bombing is, we all know what the term is, or it's when you get an excessive amount of attention. But what is actually happening to you is they are reflecting back to you who you really want to see. So of course you fall in love, because for the first time, you're seeing yourself as you've always wanted to see yourself, because they see you, they hear you, they validate you. So you're like, wow, I am this amazing person. He or she thinks I'm beautiful, handsome, smart, can't do anything wrong. And then it ends because the mask falls. That is not sustainable. So it goes into the devaluation stage, which is things like gaslighting, triangulation, pitting somebody against another person, even if they're dead. Like your father would be so upset if he saw the way you treat me.
You sound just
your
like
father's
my
dead.
Sorry.
Sorry. Trigger warning. I should have said.
No. I've done way much on myself.
You've done a lot of work.
I've done a lot of work.
You're not triggered. You're resilient.
No, I'm not triggered.
And then all the other things like ghosting.
So ghosting is when, I mean, just so people understand the definitions, it's when you're having loads of contact and then suddenly none. And you don't know where this
They literally just disappear. Yeah. And one of my favorites is called Flying Monkeys. It's from The Wizard of Oz, which is like my all-time favorite film. And you remember the Wicked Witch? She had these monkeys that kind of went out and did her dirty work. The flying monkeys frequently happens like in a corporate situation or a family situation where, so let's say my mother's deceased, so I can use this. My mother calls me up. I'm American. She's an American. Says, "Are you coming home for Thanksgiving?" And I go, "No, I can't really make it this year. I've got blah, blah, blah." And she doesn't just triangulate me with like my brother and then, say, "Your sister said this to me." She tells everybody. And then she's got all these flying monkeys and they're all like getting in touch. "What do you mean?
What,
you're not coming home?" Yes. So they're all doing her dirty work. My mother was never like this. That's why I can use this. But you'll get that in corporate situations. Like you're being bullied and you go to HR and HR tells the boss and the boss doesn't want to acknowledge that you're getting bullied. So the boss tells everybody, "Oh my God, they're so wet. They're so sensitive. They're so this." And then the jungle telegraph or whatever you want to call it, the flying monkeys start. And everybody turns against you. These are really I'm making light of them, but they're very painful situations to be in, especially with family members, because we believe blood is thicker than water. But I have my own opinion on that when it's not. So there's so many things that they do to you and to wear you down, and they're devaluing you literally. And then the final stage is, well, it's not final, but it's almost final. It's discard. That's where ghosting can come in. That's it. They cut you off. But there's another stage that a lot of narcissists will use, and it's based on a British vacuum cleaner called a Hoover. And it's called hoovering. And it's, imagine a Hoover, they come back. So they come back for you. Now, this can happen a week later, 3 years later, 10 years later. This happened to me with a previous narcissistic boyfriend during the pandemic. Hadn't seen him for 10 years. He Facebook messaged me and said, "I'm lying in hospital on my deathbed," because he had got COVID and he had a lung removed, which I had no idea about. "And I'm lying here thinking of how badly I treated you and how sorry I am." And, so this is like wonderful. You've been waiting 10 years for this apology. But then you wake up and go, "Now, hang on a minute. This is coming from a very classic narcissistic person." And he knew it because he had been diagnosed. Actually, he was NPD. And you have to wake up because it's so attractive. It's so seductive that you get pulled back into this. And this is what happens with so many relationships. It's that short period of time where a story I heard, well, I'll never forget, the woman went to a party. You know how you're there at a party and somebody says, "Your glass is empty. Let me get you a drink." This man went and got her a drink. Husband's watching the whole thing, brings her back the drink. They're chatting. Time to go home. Husband and her go home, get home. He beats her to a pulp. She ends up in hospital. And he comes in the next day with flowers and everything and apologies. And he said, "I'm so sorry. I only did that because I love you so much." And of course she goes back. Because sometimes we're like, why did these people go back?
Absolutely.
But there it is. It's the hoovering. And then he starts all over again. The love bombing, which will be much shorter this time, which started with the flowers and the apology. And then the devaluation, and then he'll discard her again. And she will go round and round and round until she completely loses herself, her mind, her self-worth, her money sometimes. Yeah, there's so
And we
much to
often
it.
see that in clients as well,
Yeah.
don't we? But they go, I used to be this top, I mean, I've heard
Yeah.
it from clients, I used to be this top corporate, person, male or female. I could deal with this and this and this. Now, where's my confidence gone? I don't recognize who I am anymore. And that's always a big clue for me. I'm
It's so
definitely not
true.
the specialist. I come to you for that sort of, when I
No,
think
no. I mean,
I as you know, I contact you, I have a chat when we meet up and go, it's right, and what's this? And that's,
yeah.
it's a way to learn. So how can people find you, Michele? Because I'm aware of
Okay,
time here.
I'm on Instagram. I'm Michele Paradise Official. However, my mother chose to spell my name with one L instead of two. So it's Michele Paradise, just the way it sounds, official. I'm on I'm on YouTube, Mish Para, two halves of my name. And I've got a course coming up in October, which is a hybrid course. It's going to be online, but I'm also going to go live with the group once a week. So it's I believe it's an 8-week course, but I can provide a lot of information. So what I thought
Okay,
we
give
could
me the
do. Oh,
links.
and let me just say what it's about. It's about people pleasing, because people pleasers are the absolute perfect target for a narcissist. Okay, here I am. I know I've done it. And I want to help people to become aware of their patterns of behavior, their personality adaptations, to then accept in that moment who they are now, not forever, because we have neuroplasticity, as you know, and we can change all of this stuff. We're not born like this. Then we are more consciously aware, and then we make different choices. So what the real core of this is, Gabor says this, I'm sorry, I've got his book on my desk always, The Myth of Normal, the hidden trauma, illness, and healing in a toxic culture. And what he says, and I absolutely believe, is so many autoimmune diseases, the core of them are people pleasers and not saying no, not knowing how to say no, not having any boundaries. And I'm sorry to say this is in particular with women. So I'm doing this course, and we'll put a link up and they can join the wait list and find out more about it before committing to anything.
Perfect. And as you say, it's often, I've got a friend very much fibromyalgia, but my God, she's a people pleaser for everybody. She controls the whole family. Everybody goes to her. And you just, having seen her, known as best friend, for years, you think, I can see where this is coming from as I did this work. Michele, as always, we could talk for hours.
Let's do it again.
let's do it again. Absolutely, let's do it again.
We'll talk about grey rocking and all those things in the narcissism. There you go, even we got lots more to talk about.
But I think there's a lot there, as you say. It's all about justification sometimes, that says, I've always got to justify. And it's that person that's always got to, in my book, I've spotted, is always got to have the last word, basically. And if you try and go back to unpick all that justification, they will just come back with even more ammunition. It's that. So sometimes it's just, I've learned just to go,
absolutely.
That's it.
And just a real warning about what you just said is, never take them on in an email, because that is the worst. They will chapter and verse have to be right. Okay. Anything
I've experienced that.
Yes, don't go there. It's bad enough the conversational aspect of it, but in writing, they're masters.
I mean, this is the person that does it always by WhatsApp or text, or leaves, voice messages, isn't it? Rather than actually have, and that's the other one, the voice notes that you get, that they would rather do that than actually have the conversation.
Yeah.
Unlike us, who we could, as we say, talk for hours. Michele, thank you very much. Just again, for your website, it's findingparadise.me, where they will find you. And then also on social media, and it's Michele with 1L.
I know. What can I say? Jill, thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast. I love it. I can talk. We're communicators ultimately, aren't we? That's what we are. We are supreme communicators, and
absolutely.
I love it.
It's been a real pleasure, and let's do it again soon.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you to everybody listening to this or watching this on YouTube. It will be our first one up. And if you would like to subscribe, obviously, to Michele's YouTube channel, you'll get a huge amount of information. My YouTube channel is just starting, and that's part of the conversation I had with Michele not so long ago. But please do. Thank you ever so much for listening. And again, if you'd like to subscribe, make sure you get every single one of my episodes. It's GillHB and Friends. Thank you, Michele. And well, yes,
Thank
have
you.
a good week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.